86 wins got you an AL wildcard spot last season. Now, the Halos had 73 wins, and today we're going to find those 13 wins, 13 potential games that could have gone our way, that would have given us a wildcard spot. Today, we're going to prove that the Angels are not that far away from the playoffs. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Every show is free and available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. Thank you to those that already have. It's so fun to see what you think about the show. And those watching on YouTube, you can help the show out with a like, a comment, a subscription, and you can click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Thanks for being here with us for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike, we got a quick announcement regarding this afternoon and the announcement of the AL MVP that's happening on MLB Network. Hey, we're going to go live on YouTube. So Friday's episode will be our live that we do this afternoon on YouTube. We want you to be there. Join us in the comments section. We'll be able to see all your thoughts and feelings. It's going to be our first live on YouTube, so if there's some sketchiness or some mistakes there, please just bear with us. But we're excited to do it, and we hope that you are too. And we'll get our initial reactions. We'll get your reactions to the announcement of the AL MVP. Of course, Shohei Ohtani is up for the award against Aaron Judge and Yordan Alvarez. It's really kind of a two-horse race there, Mike.
Right.
So we'll see what the announcement is. We hope you'll join us live on YouTube this afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. So we know that you're listening all over the world and all across the country. But yes, 3 p.m. West Coast time, 6 p.m. East Coast time.
That West Coast bias, hopefully it plays in really hard
Hey.
with Shohei Ohtani, and he wins that MVP. I know he was fourth in the Cy Young, and so I guess that's all right? He wasn't in the top three, but it's going to be an interesting conversation if he wins, and it'll be an interesting conversation if he doesn't win. But a conversation we're going to have today, Johnny, I think is really important for the team moving forward, because you and I are convinced that the Angels are not that far away from a playoff spot. Now, if you're listening or if you're watching and you're thinking we're ridiculous, let us explain. It was 86 wins that got you a wild card spot in the American League last season. That was the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yes.
The Angels had 73, but the gap was actually not so significant. It's 13 wins, and you and I have gone through 13 games in this last season. We've done all the heavy lifting. We've done all the work, and now we're going to turn in our work and allow you to grade us. But we think that we have found 13 games that if just one thing went our way, it could have been a win, and we perhaps would have been in the playoffs. These games are a combination of bullpen struggles, a combination of offensive struggles, and of course, there was a time where Joe Maddon was our manager, and we all know how much he frustrated us with his decisions. So each of these games have a combination of both, or they have one of those things that was significant during that game. So we're going to share 13 games with you. And we're going to figure out if these games would be winnable for us as the Angels.
Yeah, and we're going to start with our favorite term, the bullpen. Of course, they cause us pain when they can't hold a lead, and we're going to begin the conversation there. And we're going to start on May 14th, Mike, all the way back in May when we were riding high
when
on
we were
the
good.
Thrill of winning. And this game came against the A's. It was the first game of a doubleheader. The Angels led 3-1 on the back of a Jonathan Diaz start and, of course, the bullpen. Then, of course, you have Rysel come in to close out the game. That's what he was paid for. That's what he's here to do. Somebody we really counted on in 21 to shut the door at the end of the game. Rysel Iglesias came in, gave up 2 hits, 3 runs, and a walk. He had 2 outs and a pinch hitter. Luis Barrera hit a 3-run home run. And this is a game that Rysel normally closes a 3-1 game. And unfortunately, it did not get the win for the Halos. That's a game that we missed out on, a win that could have ended up being very valuable to us as one of the 13 games.
Yeah, because they would have swept that series because they
Right.
won 3 of 4 in that series, and so they could
Right.
have won all 4. Let me take you to May 18th, John, and see if you can find out the trend here. This is a game against Texas. We lost 6-5, and Rysel blew this game. He blew the save in this game, and the really hard part about this game is that Ohtani had a really strong start in this game. So not only did it go against the Angels and we lost this game, but Ohtani would have gotten a win here, a win that maybe puts him in the top 3 for Cy Young voting and maybe actually helps his MVP case. But Rysel blew this game as well. May 18th, we lost 6-5 to the Texas Rangers.
Brutal. How about these? This was a series against the Blue Jays, May 27th, the 28th, and the 29th against Toronto. The first game, we had a start from your guy, Chase Silseth. You really like him. He went 4 1/3, and he got pulled while the team was leading. Silseth, of course, coming up from AA, not going to get much length out of him, but a decent start, especially when you're leading against the Toronto offense of Vladdy Jr. and Bo Bichette and those guys. The second game came out as a 6-5 loss. Kyle Barraclough lost that game. Remember Kyle Barraclough?
I remember him. Yeah, he pitched like
Can't
a
forget that
Barraclough.
name. And the third game, oh so close, an 11-10 loss against the Blue Jays.
Yep.
Ryan Tepera and Jose Quijada blew the lead in the 8th inning. This was the series where we saw what's his name in the outfield, Juan Lagares, make some errors, right? Didn't he just come up? And they had just put him on a minor league deal, and then they brought him up, and we're like, oh, well, he's not going to hit, but he's got great defense. Well, that went out the window in this Toronto series.
Or have great defense.
He didn't do anything. So the key to the first game, Aaron Loop gave up that lead that Chase Silseth started with. And the key to the last 2 games, no Rysel Iglesias when it mattered the most against the Toronto Blue Jays. So right there is a weekend series of 3 games that you could have easily had in the bag and help your cause at the end of the season.
I'm going to go to June 2nd, John. This is against the Yanks, and we always play the Yankees really, really well. And this was when they were in the midst of their hot streak, and then they started to cool off a bit. We lost this game 2-1, and here's what's so frustrating. It was a great start from Reed Detmers, and the bullpen actually held the game. They led 1-0 going into the 8th inning, and then Ollie Ortega came in the 8th inning and gave up the lead. Now, why was he in there, Johnny? Because the bullpen was used incorrectly in this game. They brought in Aaron Loop, who only pitched 2/3 of an inning, but he pitched really well. No hits, no runs. And then Tepera pitched a full inning, no hits and no runs. But then when the 8th inning hit, they didn't want to bring Rysel in, so they brought in Ollie Ortega, and he ended up blowing the game, giving up two runs, and the Angels ended up losing this game 2-1.
Seems like they could have put in one more reliever for the 8th and then went to Rysel, but yeah, Ortega in the 8th there just was not a reliable choice at that point.
Yeah.
So those right there are 6 wins, Mike, that we just discussed.
Yeah.
6 wins if the bullpen had been able to do their job. That would have got us to a 77 win total this season if the Angels were able to get the 6 wins that we just discussed. And because there's 13, we've got a few more to go that would have gotten us to 86 wins on the season. And we'll get to those in just a minute.
And coming up on Locked On Angels, we'll share about 3 games where one run could have changed everything for us. But first, Locked On Angels is brought to you by Simply Safe. If you thought about securing your home with a home security system, but you've been putting it off, you'll want to listen up, because right now, Locked On Angel listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. And here's why getting security now is so important. During the holiday season, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts, they spike nationally, and Simply Safe will give you the protection that you need. With Simply Safe, you get HD security cameras inside and out, plus advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, along with hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats for your home. With a top-rated Simply Safe app, being safe is convenient and easy. You can stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. You can arm disarm, unlock the door for guests, access your cameras, or adjust your system settings. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system Locked On recommends. Get 50% off your SimpliSafe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't miss it. Don't wait. It's simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. And remember, there's no safe, Johnny, like SimpliSafe.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. And for your second listen today, head on over to Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, like the AL MVP announcement and the NL MVP announcement later today. Get beyond the scoreboard and go behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We are in the middle of finding 13 wins for the Halos to get them to 86 wins. They finished the season last season with 73 wins. And we think that these games that we have pointed out would actually be potentially winnable games for the Halos. Now, Johnny, just prepare yourself, all right? You maybe need to take a nitro because the following games were some of Joe Madden's final games, and these were games that he overmanaged, where he exhausted and depleted the bullpen. So why don't you take us to June 5th against the Phillies, Jonathan?
Yeah, this is a game against the Phillies that the Angels lost 9-7. This one was a heartbreaker because not only were the Angels leading 6-2, the Phils tied it up at 6 off of was it a Bryce Harper grand slam in that game?
Yes. Yeah.
And so the Halos actually took back the lead in the ninth inning, Mike. It was 7-6. And Joe Madden had Patrick Sandoval start this game, but he pulled him very early. That was one thing that we were always upset about, was the quick hook on these starters. So Patrick Sandoval went 4 2/3 that game, and then he was pulled. And then Rysel had to go 1 1/3 inning and ended up giving up the walk-off 3-run home run to Bryson Stott, the rookie. Obviously, he became a big piece of the Phillies lineup this season. But at that point, he was still a rook, and he's hitting a 3-run shot off of our closer. So that was not a fun feeling at all.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take you to June 6th, 7th, and 8th. But let me just talk about the first game. We lost 1-0 to the Red Sox. Remember, this is in the midst of our losing streak.
Yes.
And the key to this game, Johnny, was the top of the lineup got on base. But guess what the bottom of the lineup couldn't do? Anything. They couldn't do anything. Now, if you were to go back and look at the lineup, though, this was one of our AAA lineups.
Right.
Like 4 A's.
Quad A.
Yes, this was like Jose Rojas lineup.
Oh, gosh.
And it was after game. Yeah, those two guys were in. It was after game 1 on June 6th that Madden was actually fired. And so then game 2 came along. Phil Nevin was the manager. And it was a game that we potentially were close to winning. We actually led 5-3 after a great start from Jose Suarez. This was the game that you actually came on this show, Johnny, and said, I love that Phil Nevin went out and had a conversation with Jose and left him in. Do you remember that?
Right. I do remember that conversation because we hadn't seen that from Joe Madden. We knew that if he was walking out, he was going to get the hook to give the hook to the starter, and that was that. But it was great to see Phil say, hey, can you get this last guy? And Suarez say, yeah, I think so. Because prior to that, Suarez was looking over at the bullpen or looking over at the dugout, seeing, is the manager coming? Is Joe coming? Am I getting pulled? When am I getting pulled? And this one was like, no, give the guy some confidence. And that's exactly what Phil Nevin did there.
Yeah. And then Ryan Tepera came in eventually in this game and unfortunately gave this one away. And you've mentioned multiple times that Perry Minasian went and improved the bullpen, but those guys just didn't do what we expected them to do. And this is one of those cases where Tepera didn't do that. Then game 3, Johnny, again, another close game. It was 1-0 was this game. We lost 1-0. The key to this game is Detmers is pitching a gem, but he was pulled after 4 1/3, not by Joe Madden because he was fired, but by Phil Nevin. And you and I were like, why? Why did you pull him?
Don't do the Joe playbook.
No, but the other issue here was that the Angels just didn't have any offense. They were 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position. And so those games were winnable against the Red Sox. I mean, let me go back. Game 1, 1-0. Game 2, 6-5. And game 3, 1-0, Johnny.
It's just games like that are so frustrating, especially in the middle of a losing streak where you know that the game is in reach and you just can't get there. And I think that's what made the losing streak that much more difficult was these were winnable games. You had the chance to win some of them. You had the chance to come back in some of them. So that's what made the losing streak so frustrating. You're right. I need a melatonin to calm down. I'm getting all those feelings from the losing streak back again. Hey, Mike, on June 14th against the Dodgers, we lost 2-0, and the Angels left 6 runners in scoring position in this game.
Wow.
Top of the lineup had 3 hits and a walk, and they were on base 2 other times. The bottom of the lineup, get this, 0 hits and no walks. We've seen that story before.
That's a terrible story. That's why we need some offense, right? July 3rd is another game that I think we could have had. We played the Astros. We lost 4-2. Suarez had a really great start. This was another opportunity for Suarez to really prove himself. Phil had another good conversation with him. But stop me if I'm a broken record here, Johnny, but Tepera blew the save, and it was a walk-off loss in this one. And so those were some games that we think the Angels could have pulled in, could have potentially won, including those games and the games from the first segment. This would have gotten us to 83 wins total. Now, before we even talk about the next segment and the next wins, Johnny, I think an 83-win season would have been maybe a season where Joe Maddon doesn't get fired. I think we'd be frustrated, but I don't think that he gets fired if we win 83 games because you're still over 500.
Well, and he got fired so early on because of the losing streak, and some of the games that we talked about were part of that losing streak.
Yeah.
And if he had stopped the bleeding sooner, if he had made better decisions, like I've said it a million times on this podcast.
Say it 1,000,001.
4-8 doesn't get you fired. 0-12 gets you fired, right? And that's what happened to Joe Maddon. And he had easily winnable games. I know that still would have sucked to go 4-8 over that stretch, but he would have kept his job. I really think he would have kept his job at the end of that. So again, we went through all of these games so far in the show that are opportunities for the Angels to walk away with the win. And at this point, with all the games that we've talked about, we'd be at 83, just 3 away from the 86 that would send them to the American League Wildcard this season.
Well, Locked On Angels is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your betting info, stats, news, analysis, everything that you need. They got it for you. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer to esports. They've got you covered at betonline.net. And of course, you love sports podcasts because you're here. Well, you can find some betting sports podcasts at BetOnline as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Mike, in our last segment today, we're going to talk about the struggling offense that we had and also some pitching struggles that were the perfect storm, really, and made up for a combination of why we didn't get these last couple of wins that we're about to talk about right now and would have certainly got us to the American League wild card. Again, we're looking for 13 wins somewhere to get us from 73 to 86. And we certainly have spoken about games where those were within reach. Let's talk about a few more where the hitters and the pitching both had some struggles this season. August 6th against the Mariners, we lost that one 2-1. We had 7 runners left, not just on base, in scoring position, Mike.
Right.
2-1 loss to the Mariners, who, they get my goat. 7 runners left on base in scoring position. That is a brutal and easily winnable loss.
Yeah, think about this. Like, your runner in scoring position is at second base or at third base. That's just a matter of moving the runner over. That's just a matter of making contact and grounding out to the right person.
Right.
Or hitting a sacrifice fly.
Yes.
And the Angels couldn't do any of that. They were 0 for 7 with these runners. Yeah. They had nothing going on. And to think that Jeremy Reed made it through the entire year is still blowing my mind. All right, so Marcus Timms, we're calling you out. It's time to get this offense going. Let me talk about August 24th against the Rays, the team that we would replace in the wild card. This would be the game. If we were neck and neck with them, this would be the game that we actually could take from them. It was an extra inning game. We lost 4-3. Now, here's what's really frustrating about this game. The Halos scored in the 9th, and then they scored in the 10th to take the lead. But John, can't put my finger on it.
How does it go?
But the bullpen was a pain in our butt, and they blew this game and lost it in extra innings. So this again would have been the game that would have allowed us to take the Rays spot in that wild card slot, and then they would have been knocked out of the playoffs, or at least we would have had one more win than them at this point in the season.
It's so frustrating to know that they scored in those extra inning moments because, like in the 10th, you have that ghost runner on.
Yep.
And the Angels could not deliver with the ghost runner on base.
No.
Kind of like that loss to the Mariners. They couldn't hit a sacrifice fly. They couldn't bunt a guy over. They couldn't hit a grounder to somebody to move the runner.
How many shows have we come on here and just went, bunt?
Seriously.
And then all of you that are listening and watching, like the comments on YouTube have been fun because it was just, why can't they bunt? What happened to this? Where's Mike Scioscia? Right? Like,
they can hold the bat with two hands, right? Good grief.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk about October 3rd. This is the end of the season, Mike. Our last series against the Oakland A's in Oakland. And we lost in walk-off fashion to the A's 5-4. Aaron Loup fell apart in this game. Halos led 4-0 in this game until the 8th inning. Mike, that's 90% of the game. What happened?
Why are we even in this position, right? And you would think that you're bringing in the guys that you paid a lot of money to hold the game, and this is just I think this is a perfect game to talk about. Like, yes, we need starters, and I'm glad that we got Tyler Anderson. Yeah, but this is also an announcement that we need bullpen guys, whether we go and get them or we have them in-house, like a Ben Joyce or like a Chris Rodriguez or an Andrew Wantz or an Austin Warren. Like, it's time for these guys to step up because games like this are the reason why the Halos haven't been to the playoffs since 2014.
Exactly. And Aaron Loup is the guy that you paid to do his job this season. And I'll defend Perry until the end of time. He spent money on the bullpen. We were always saying, get pitching, get pitching, get pitching. He did that. And these guys did not deliver, especially Aaron Loup and Ryan Tepera. Man, they just really fell apart in key moments this season. So it's really unfortunate, especially to lose in walk-off fashion and then also be swept by the A's, who had been so down on their luck all season. All their best players went away. I mean, they still had, Sean Murphy and a few others on the team, but good grief. Like, they didn't have Matt Olson. They didn't have Matt Chapman. They didn't have their starting pitching that they had at the beginning of the offseason. They traded them all away. Yeah. And here we are still getting swept. Here we are losing 5-4 because we had a 4-0 lead and our bullpen let it go. There's been a lot of commenters as you and I have been having conversations about what the Angels should do next and what free agent moves that they need to do. I'm worried about signing somebody to the bullpen, especially after last year. Yeah. When you had guys who had a pretty proven track record step into those roles and not deliver. Relievers are so volatile. They're always up and down. You never know what you're going to get. But I really think the in-house option of Chris Rodriguez, Andrew Wantz, Austin Warren, like you mentioned, and some of those guys up from AA, like let's run those guys through the factory and see what happens rather than splurging on a big reliever. Yes, we need a closer. That would be a great thing to get, but I don't know who to get now, really. I mean, at this point, I just think that you kind of have to close by committee or figure out what you're going to do there. But the bullpen is so volatile, and these games prove that. So these are 3 more games that could have been wins for the Angels, would have got them to the win total that they needed of 86 to make it into the AL wildcard race. And if the Halos get one hit or not give up one hit, things could have been very different. As you saw, these were close games. These were 2-1, 4-3, 5-4, those sorts of things. And it really comes down to just that one big hit, that one incredible play that stops a run from scoring, like that changes the entire game. And that's what's so enjoyable about baseball, but it's also what's so frustrating about Angels baseball. And I hope that we have more of those moments this season. And hopefully today you've seen through the games that Mike and I have shown you that the Angels, despite their record, we're not that far away from the playoffs at the end of the day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today, the almost playoff team, Locked On Angels. And for your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. They're sharing some of the biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and of course, the take of the day. They're available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. It's the best way to connect with the show and connect with Mike and I. And also, if you're on YouTube, feel free to comment below. Once again, 3 p.m. Pacific time, AL MVP announcement. We're going to do a live YouTube show. And if you're not able to make it, no worries. We'll have that episode up for you. And if you're an audio listener, we'll have that on the other side for you on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. That audio version of the episode will be shrunk down and edited, obviously, and put out there on the audio side for you on Friday morning. So get ready for that. We hope that you'll join us in the chat on the YouTube live. Again, bear with us. It's our first one. So if anything goes wrong, I'm blaming you, Mike.
Well, you know what? I'll take the blame because I'm the older brother, but nothing's going to go wrong because we're Locked On Angels, and we're either going to be celebrating a Shohei Ohtani MVP announcement, or we're going to demand a recount because it's rigged.
The count.
It's rigged and it's not true. And
unless Ohtani wins.
Unless Ohtani wins. But if he doesn't, that's not my MVP.
It sounds like Tuesday 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm saying. Oh, brother. All right, everybody. We hope you'll join us 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, right here on Locked On Angels. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
See you this afternoon, evening for the AL MVP announcement. We hope you'll join us.